right, we are live. Welcome to Global Radio Ideas webinar. We'll get started in just a couple of moments, give people a couple of minutes to log into today's webinar. If you're out there watching, feel free to give us a shout out in the chat box. Let us know where you're viewing today. We'd love to say hello to you and find out where in the world you are. So please do that. And again, we'll get started in just about a minute or so.
Absolutely. We'll see the people rolling in. I see like 28 people already there. So like Ken said, let us know where you're from. Tucson, Arizona. Welcome. Huntington Beach, Charlie.
Huntington Beach sounds nice.
Yeah. Sacramento,
Absolutely.
California, South Bend, Indiana. And I know we got people watching all over the world. We usually get more international people than American people. So let us know where you are. Hi, Ronnie. You got a fan out there. Dave Farrow. Hello from London, Ontario. Love you.
Damn, I have to pay him $5 now.
And then hello from the UK. And Belize.
Belize.
Yeah.
Sue's on holidays, I think.
And Malaysia, where I think it's late at night.
Middle of the night.
Yeah. So Toronto, WNCX Cleveland, and many others. So thank you for joining us today. We're really glad you're here for Global Radio's Ideas webinar. What are we up to now, Andy? 16?
16, I would say so, yeah.
16. So, and thanks for watching wherever you are in the world. Again, feel free to put a shout out in there. We'd love to say hi to you. My name is Ken Benson from P1 Media Group. If you don't know what we do, we provide research and insights to radio brands worldwide. And my co-host, who's wearing the stars and stripes today in Germany, strange.
Especially for you, Ken. Especially for you. That's what I dressed up for you today.
Thank you. It's my co-host, Andy Sandeman, who is the CEO of Benstown, a global leader in imaging and production.
Yes, guys. Thanks for joining us today. This is our 16th webinar. Wow, Ken said it before. Radio from the inside out, how to succeed in today's radio reality. As always, I see you're utilizing it pretty heavily already. The chat box is activated. Let us know where you're watching. If you have questions for Ronnie, please post it. We'll keep that for later. And Ronnie's answering most of them, all of them, besides the one from Charlie. I see here, does Ronnie have pants on? Besides that, I'm pretty sure we're going to answer all of the questions later.
We could answer that question, but there'd be a non-disclosure agreement first.
All right, so let's tell you about our guest today. He's a native of Australia, and like many Australians in radio, has a keen sense of adventure, and his career has taken him well beyond Australia. Although he began his career, as many of us did, in small markets, and quickly worked his way up in Australia to be a program director and a morning man. He then made the big move to the iconic Nova 100 in Melbourne as the head of music, then decided to leave the sunshine and warmth of the Southern Hemisphere in Australia for the Northern, and made the big move to snowy white Canada, where he was named brand director for Bell Radio in Vancouver and launched Virgin Radio, which he quickly took to, was it number one again? Number one, yeah. Then another major Canadian broadcaster, Chorus, quickly snatched him up to be the programmer of the legendary rock station CFOX, and shortly thereafter named him the VP of National Programming. And his spirit of adventure then took him to Alpha Media in the US as VP of Content, where he programmed multiple stations, including stations in San Jose, California, and Portland, Oregon. And then back to Australia, and now back again in Canada, the ping pong ball of radio. Let's talk to Ronnie Stanton, National Director of Music and Regional Program Director for British Columbia and Alberta. Today, he's also the man in charge of the number 1 and number 2 stations in Vancouver. And in 2020, was named Program Director of the Year. Welcome, my favorite Aussie, Ronnie Stanton.
Thank you, Ken. It saddens me a little bit I'm the only Aussie you know, but that's okay.
Those shorts in the photo sadden me, but
really, those shorts tell you everything you need to know.
Yeah, well, I will say Ronnie and I have worked together for quite a while now, and the guy has the best T-shirt collection in the world. I'm not sure what's on your shirt today, but maybe you should. Woodstock. See, iconic. Yeah. So here we go.
Fun.
Absolutely. I mean, let's kick it off. So Ronnie, this is I think that's my favorite part of the webinar. So you're undoubtedly a very accomplished radio programmer, and we learned a lot of your journey from Ken by introducing you. So with your multi-format success in 3 countries, I think we want to kick it off by tell us something people don't know about Ronnie Stanton.
Apart from liking pina coladas and getting caught in the rain, of course.
Exactly.
Well, I don't know. My jam is travel, and the pandemic has hurt accordingly because we can't really go anywhere, and it's coming back slowly. But I can't wait. So I've seen lots of the planet, which I feel very humbled to be able to say that I've seen a lot. My favorite place is Iceland.
Oh, wow.
I've been there 4 times and can't wait to go back. There's me next to a very small waterfall.
And it looks like a lot of snow and no coat.
Well, I never wear a coat. You know that.
I knew that, yeah.
Yeah.
T-shirts year round.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get on to, we've had some amazing guests on this webinar over the past year and a half, Ronnie. And you're actually our first guest that's still working inside a radio station day to day. And today's webinar is titled Radio from the Inside Out. It's been a while since I've worked day to day in a radio station too, so we know it's changed dramatically. What's it like now, and how has it changed?
Everything's changed. Everything's changed, and not just through the marching of time, not just through new ways and new competitors with the digital landscape, meaning that the enemy is your iPhone as much as it is the radio station across the road. But then COVID hit and changed everything again. It disrupted the commute. It shifted people's listening habits as they no longer worked in an office with half of the planet working from home. It affected morning radio tuning where people were getting up later. So, through all of that, everything's changed. And then you look at the business realities where often revenues are pointed in the wrong direction, which places pressure on product and the programmers. And it's a very different environment from 2 years ago and 5 and 10 and 20 years ago. And I think the only thing we can bank on is that it's going to keep changing.
Right. Absolutely. Challenging times. So, Ronnie, with your multi-country and multi-format programming experience, I think it's really interesting to dive in. Like, what are the similarities and the differences you found while working in 3 different countries and parts of the world?
The similarity, I think, is that people all over the world, whether they are in North America or the Southern Hemisphere, whether they speak English or Malaysian, people want from the radio, I think, the same things. They seek information and entertainment, and they seek companionship, which I think is the thing that radio does better than any other medium. Now, the whole information and entertainment piece, that's going to be different for different brands. 2UE in Sydney or CKNW in Vancouver are going to be heavy information and lower entertainment, where Z100 New York is high entertainment and low information. But that's what we do. We do information and entertainment, and we offer companionship. And if we can put that personalized approach on it, no matter where we are in the world, it's going to lift us up. The differences, I think, there's lots of subtle differences. There's lots of nuances that make working in 3 countries really different. But I think it all comes down eventually to market size and the saturation of signals. So similar market sizes, let's not nickel and dime people. But if you look at Sydney, Australia, Toronto, Canada, San Francisco, California, they're all kind of similar populations. Sydney has like 8 FMs. Toronto has 18 FMs, and San Francisco has 68 FMs. So So that's going to change things. It's going to mean that in Sydney, theoretically, there's more money being taken out of the advertising pie, which means that there's more money to pay great talent, to excite the audience with amazing promotions, to innovate, all of that stuff. Canada's somewhere in the middle. Lots of stations in a market, which keeps it competitive, and the music is more niche on each of those signals than the wider, broad formats in Oz. But there's still good revenues to be made, and there's still superstars of the medium. And then you get to a 68 FM market like San Fran, where the reality is lots of syndication and programmers doing multiple brands and less money coming out of the market, which leads to less innovation, sadly. I think that's the big difference. All of the other little things are kind of a trickle-on effect from that.
Yeah.
So in your mind, then, it's mainly about the number of sticks. And in Sydney, where there's few sticks, there's a lot more resources to do, I guess, more innovative radio and pay better talent and maintain better talent, where we get to a market, like you suggested, like San Francisco, with 68 FMs in the entire market area.
Yeah.
The revenues per station are way, way less. And that's interesting.
It's not a criticism by any means. It's just a business reality that's the way it is. Musically, there's vast differences too, though. Where in San Francisco, where there's 68 signals, each of those musical offerings is a very defined piece. Often, where in Australia, you'll hear on a hot AC station great breadth that we don't see in North America because there's fewer signals.
So the subtitle of today's webinar is How to Succeed in Today's Radio Reality. And, given the economic pressure we're facing, and radio was facing economic pressure in a lot of markets even pre-COVID. Of course, it's been worse since COVID. Even with COVID and economic pressures, you've managed somehow to take two stations in Vancouver, British Columbia, to number 1 and number 2 in the market. So how did you do it?
Well, I don't know. With any rating success, some of it's luck. I'm not going to claim all of it. Some of it's luck. Most of it's an amazing team, but strategy's a thing too. We saw the opportunity with the two stations in Vancouver to pivot them musically to broader positions to where they were 8 years ago. Shifted the lineup so it was more broad appeal, added elements to really build stationality between those two brands. They felt a little bit like the same station on two signals at one point, but they're really defined offerings now. Marketing, all of those things come into play. It's like every overnight success. It's not really overnight. There's years of toil that sit behind it to refine the products. And I spoke about luck a minute ago. I think some of it was pandemic. We touched on it before, how it's changed everything. If you think about accounting offices that are no longer full of 50 people, where we have to agree on one station, so it's probably the AC station. If everyone's working from home now, their personal tastes come into play more, and it's okay to play a radio station that plays a bit of rock and roll during the day, because we don't have to all agree. So the passion formats, I think we've seen lift during the pandemic. We've seen, some of those rock formats, the classic rock formats, the country formats, those more niche offerings that are less necessarily huge cumers, have seen better ratings because they're getting used more by people working from home. I think that's a thing.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's astonishing achievement, though. We want to, take our hats off to you to have the number 1 and number 2 station in Vancouver, which is one of the largest markets in Canada, a very competitive market. It's an amazing accomplishment, and especially for an Aussie in Canada.
As we learned, the language of radio is somehow universal. So we're chatting with Ronnie Stanton from Chorus Radio and Ronnie Stanton Media. Have a questions, enter it in the chat box. Ronnie will answer your questions a little later in the show. Ronnie, anyone that listened to one of your stations can tell, and especially that's a great question for me because that's my field of work. You're obsessed with station imaging. Why do you place so much emphasis on the station's sound design? Why is that so important for you?
Andy, I'm obsessed. Like, I'm obsessed with it. I think it comes down simply to unduplicatable content. That as part of the shifts in the way we listen, in the way that people use the radio, if you have a rock station, you have to be zen with the fact that people don't need you anymore to hear Pearl Jam Black, or to hear the new Black Keys song, or to hear the White Stripes or the Rolling Stones. They don't need you. They can punch it up on Spotify or Apple Music or YouTube or whatever their digital taste leans to in half a second. They don't have to sit through your stinking commercials and all of that stuff to get their favorite song. So the music sets the tone of the party now, but I don't think it's the core audience magnet that it once was. Which means that the stickiness, the glue, has to come from the other pieces of the radio offering, which is the personalities, the contests, and I call it the stationality, the personality that the imaging portrays. So, yeah, I'm obsessed with imaging, and we work really hard at imaging. I think radio's Achilles heel is context. That so often radio stations become evergreen, and their imaging is simply a vehicle to explain what music it is we play, when the imaging can actively be a force to be reckoned with. The imaging can help set the tone of the day and put the spotlight on the fun stuff that's happening today. It was the first day of fall yesterday in North America, and I wonder what percentage of radio stations had first day of fall sweepers on. How did they bring it to life in a fun way? I bet the percentage is low, and that's sad, because it's an opportunity for us to anchor our brands in the moment, and that's what imaging does.
So, Ronnie, let me ask you this. I mean, you're working in radio today. You're responsible for 2 stations in Vancouver, plus others within the Chorus group across Canada. I've had the privilege to work with you for many years, so I know you have a tremendous capacity to get things done. But how do you juggle all these responsibilities? I mean, back when I was programming, I had 1 station. It was a full-time job. Mm-hmm. Now, I mean, you've got 2 full-time responsibilities in Vancouver, plus elsewhere. Everyone, they know, I think a lot of people know that imaging is important, but can't either prioritize or find the time to be creative and put the effort into it, to what it takes to make the station great. So what advice would you share to programmers?
Twofold. One, delegation. I think so many leaders feel like they have to have their hand on every stick and dial to be the leader. You don't. Surround yourself with great people. The team around me in both Vancouver and the Alberta stations, that I can't live without them. They're amazing at what they do. And within that delegation piece, build a team where you're casting for a play. Know what your strengths are, know what your weaknesses are, and cast accordingly. There's stuff that I'm terrible at, so I hire great people that fill those buckets up, so that as a team we get it done. And then the final piece I would say is that, it's busy, and it's only going to get busier. So you have to physically put time in your calendar to be creative. I will literally bank off hours in my week where if someone tries to put a meeting in there, I can't, I'm busy at that time. But it's me time to think about the next thing, or to write the next thing, or to conceptualize the next thing. You got to give yourself the luxury of that time.
It's funny though. It remembers me, Ken, when we spoke to Thierry from Europa Plus, kind of like said the same thing in terms of like putting a team together. He made the same point that he's always hiring people for the things he's bad at and people that are better than him than for these jobs. And I think that's a really important part where like in a world where like micromanaging gets bigger and bigger and people feel that the more appointments they have, the more busy they are. I think that's a really great strategy to point out, like that the team, the people around you need to function and you need to hire for those people where your weaknesses are. I think that's a fantastic piece of advice here.
The better the people are that you surround yourself with, the longer lunches you can have. Like it's not about ego of believing that you have to do everything to be important or vital or successful. It's teams that take stations to number one, not singular programmers.
Right. So let me just offer a little commentary here. We've conducted quite a few focus groups this year, many with some demos 35 plus. And what I've heard in the groups that I've moderated is when I ask people, and 35 plus is really what's still the bread and butter. These are really good radio listeners, right? We get to 18 to 24 and it becomes a different conversation. And I know this isn't true in every market, and these were American markets, but some of the themes that we heard back was that radio is not as local as it used to be because there's more syndicated talent and national contests. Radio is not as visible as it was. And I said, well, is this before COVID or after? Like, no, even before COVID, you just don't see or hear radio on the street like we used to. And then when I asked these people in the groups, is radio today better than it was 10 or 20 years ago, about the same, or is it worse? I mean, unanimously, they all say it's worse. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's frightening. Mm-hmm. And obviously, you found a way with your team to make it happen. But what I'm afraid of is not your two stations. Yeah, there's always success stories out there. Is that, we're taking the 35 plus listening for granted. And, when you actually talk to these people, like, no, we're not pulling the wool over their eyes. They're actually seeing the problems that we're creating by not doing the great radio used to do.
But Ken, it's a relationship. It's a relationship. The relationship that we're talking about here is between radio as a medium and the audience. And if you take something for granted or someone for granted in a relationship, it's not going to end well. It's exactly the same thing. You have to work at it. You have to continue to find ways to be relevant. You have to know what the audience is doing and thinking about and reflect that. You have to work. You can't do a music test and find 600 great songs and spin them around with 10 sweepers that say that we play Minnesota's greatest hits or whatever it is and think that we're going to be number one, because we're not. It's not enough.
No, you're right. You're right. So let me ask you this, since we just touched on, some audience feedback and research we've got, given our long-term relationship with you, Ronnie, you and your company continues to invest in research and audience insights. And why? When so many others, think that's something that can be easily cut from the budget in tough times, you guys continue to be there and invest.
Yeah, I think for Chorus with the pandemic, and it hurt everyone. The thought from our point of view was that we want to be positioned as the best radio company in terms of product when the pandemic is over and the world returns to normal, and that will serve us well, which is why we didn't take our foot off the accelerator. There's a great aviation term, phrase that I really like that I think speaks to research. The phrase is that there's only one thing worse than a pilot who's lost, and that's a pilot that doesn't know they're lost. I think it's exactly the same thing. You can listen to your station, you can pat yourself on the back, but we work for the audience, and we've got to know what they're thinking and where their needs are changing. Like it's not just about feedback in the moment for how the station sounds or how your brand perceptions are. It's about how they're using radio and what their needs are and how we can shift and best serve that.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely something I think you guys done like properly and really well. I think I want to go back to the team comment you made before, which is really appealing to me because I love personally working with people and coaching and trying to make everyone around me, including myself, better by like bouncing off ideas and get creative together. So many good programmers I met, their weakness is obviously coaching talent, in my opinion, because they're not very passionate about it. Some get impatient, the pressure is there. So talent coaching is one of your passions, as Ken told me. So what tips can you offer for programmers to turn these, let's say, dreaded coaching sessions into a very positive and more useful experience for all parties?
I think it starts with a fundamental belief that the world's changed. That 5 years ago, the songs we played were the bricks in the wall, and the talent and the imaging and the contests with the mortar that held the bricks together. I fundamentally believe that that's no longer the case. We talked before, we can bring up Pearl Jam songs on Spotify in an instant. So the music is now the mortar. And if you get out of bed believing that the imaging, that your people, that you're contesting are the things that actually matter, it shifts your focus. Yeah, you got to play the right songs and you got to play the right songs, the best ones more often, and all of that stuff. But talent is the unduplicatable piece of the radio station. Talent's the thing that you can't get elsewhere. Now, syndication, obviously, there's other stations running the same thing, but in your market, theoretically, whether yours is a live and local show or it's a syndicated show, your frequency, your brand is where it lives in that market. And that makes it special. It makes it unique. It makes it something you can actually hang your hat on and own and make better and refine and, shape that diamond into something that people are going to want to come back to day in and day out. So getting out of bed with that mindset, that talent is a vital piece, is the start. Once you've got that, you've got to build a relationship of trust with your people, that you don't have all the answers, you don't have the best ideas, you don't, I don't know everything. We're going to make mistakes, but if we do it together, if we link arms, we can go into battle against anyone because we're stronger as a group. So it's building trust. It's having courage.
Yeah.
And the courage piece goes both ways in that, that when you need to sharpen the pencil, when you need to say, hey, that bit wasn't great because of this, that it's going to be well received, that there's going to be learning moments, and that we can make people the best they can be. It also comes from having a clear vision, though, too. Like I often speak to talent who work at radio stations and don't really know who the target is and don't really know what their job is each day. They just kind of walk in and speak 3 times an hour and hope it's what they want.
So providing information is a big part of it, right? Providing vital information. Yeah.
Yeah. All of those things, I think, make that relationship stronger and better.
So, Ronnie, I know you created an acronym for morning shows, and it probably is relevant for all the talent that you work with, no matter the station, called ABCD.
Yes. So
what does it stand for, and why is it important?
Well, I couldn't think of anything for E, so I stopped. The A stands for authenticity, your favorite word, Andy. And it's kind of an overused word now, which I know is why you go, oh. But it's about, I think, being true to character. It's about within the group dynamic, being yourself. It's about being as close to the person that is at home with family or roommates or spouse or whatever versus this radio persona you've created. Because you can't bullshit the audience forever. You got to be yourself. So that authenticity is a really key piece. That the show dynamics have clear personalities on them, and that those personalities are reliable and consistent, and all of those things. The second thing, B, stands for brilliance in the moment, which is kind of a learning from PPM, but it works in all markets of radio, because it's about striving to be the best you can in any given second of the show. It's about the way the show's packaged. It's about pressing the right buttons and not talking over each other. If you imagine, it's the fancy box that we put the product in and the ribbon that goes on the box. It's a really important thing, and it gets forgotten sometimes. The C's the big one. We talked about the obsession of imaging before. I could get a tattoo with the word context, because I can't get enough. I believe that content is the enemy now. That content is stuff that is just fluff and filler, where context is it's the stuff that your talent's doing, that your imaging's doing. It's the stuff that marries the radio station to the moment specifically, or the market. You talked about localism before, Ken, or both. When it's firing on all 8 cylinders, context is a marriage to both of those things. Context is the spotlight that you get to put on the day, because as much as we talk about unduplicatable content, today is unlike any other day. It's different to tomorrow, and it's different to 2 weeks from now. And if radio can shine a light on that and bring that to life and make it unique, then the show is going to be more powerful, and the station's going to be more powerful. If you can pick up the break you just did and drop it in Kazakhstan in April next year, then we have a problem, because it's generic, and we can do better. So that's my thing about context, which I bang on about constantly. And then the D is digital. The speakers are no longer enough, and for great shows, the relationship with the audience has to extend past both A, the speakers, and B, the time frame of their show. If you're on 6 to 10, great. That doesn't mean that you're dead from 10 till 6. You have to do things. You have to connect with the audience. And I think digital offerings allow shows and stations to be 360-degree brand experiences, where there's personal touches and little videos and shared experiences. We're watching the Super Bowl just like you are, or we're watching the first episode of Yellowstone season 4 just like you are. Whatever. Like it's about connecting and nurturing that relationship with the audience.
Great. We're speaking with Ronnie Stanton from Chorus Radio in Canada. He's going to take your questions in just a moment. So if you have something for Ronnie, please put it in the chat box. So Ronnie, before we get to the audience today, we have one more question for you. What does radio need to do to continue to flourish now and into the future? Easy question.
Like, you mean like this is a futuristic radio, by the way, that we...
Yep. Suzanne pulled that up.
Hearing aid.
Beautiful, beautiful futuristic radio.
Yeah, so. soon for sale in the Benstown Oak store. So what does radio have to do to remain relevant? You mean apart from change everything?
Sure. Yeah. Oh, that answers the question perfect. Let's move over.
I think that we have to start working for the audience, but getting paid by the radio companies that we work for. Yeah, we all like being paid, but we're going to work for the audience. We've got to be relevant, and that focus on relevancy changes everything. It forces context to the top of your to-do list every day. The things that used to be 1%ers, that if we have time to do that, we should do that because that'd be kind of cool, should be the reason we get out of bed. Driving that marriage of the moment to the radio, I think, is the only way forward. And that's not a competitive secret. I think it helps all of us if everyone's doing it, because it makes the medium more sticky and more important, and it gives us longer legs.
Absolutely. So, guys, I think let's move over to the audience question. So, beside changing everything, we have a great question, I think, from Sue Tyler, considering imaging. I noticed imaging on CFOX using clips of listeners using other languages to promote the Jeff O'Neill show. Whose idea was that?
We did that at Nova in Melbourne. And when we did it there with the Australian humour and sensibility being a little more brash, we had people in saying different languages, but saying both horrible things about the radio station and generally disparaging remarks. You know, my sister has a head like a horse, like things like that, just funny things. But they would say it in different languages, and then we would come out of it innocently saying, at Nova, we never play more than 2 ads in a row. So we do a similar thing with the Jeff O'Neill show, where people say in different languages how horrible the Jeff O'Neill show is. Yeah. And then we say, no matter how you say it, the Jeff O'Neill show's great. So the idea is twofold. One, if you speak that language, it's funny because you recognize the actual gag. If you don't speak the language, it makes the station feel more multicultural, which matches the vibe of Vancouver, which is a particularly multicultural city.
Yeah, it also grabs, I think the attention is what Sue Tyler says, and I think I agree with that too as well. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, awesome idea. No wonder why you're number 1 and 2 in Vancouver.
Stop.
All right, next question. Rico Garcia. Live and local gets thrown around so much in this business, but what makes local radio a real valuable part of the brand, or is the idea overestimated?
That's a great question. That could be its own webinar, I think. How important is local in 2021 and beyond? The connectivity of localism, the anchor point of localism, I think is important. The thing that radio does that at the moment Spotify can't do, because Spotify is close or now doing merging your favorite podcast and the music you like. That's radio. So the live and local piece is the differentiator for radio today, because we can tell you need to wear a sweater, you need to take your umbrella, and you should avoid 41st Avenue because there's a traffic accident. So there's that stuff. And then there's the local piece of not just telling the story that I fell over at the supermarket, but rather I fell over at the supermarket in Smith Heights or whatever, so that you can localize. But in a time of syndication, I think it's a balancing act. You've got to make sure, I think, that there are pieces of every hour that feel distinctly like the market. Traffic, weather, those things will do that. Localism for the sake of localism, I'm not sure still has a place. I loved the TV show Game of Thrones, and that wasn't shot in Vancouver, and I'm good with it. So, great entertainment is great entertainment as long as there's fit. It has to reflect what the audience is thinking about. Back to the spirit of context. If the syndicated show or if the non-local bit is a thing that is genuinely in the audience's mind, then as long as it feels in the moment, I'm good with it.
Yeah, local definitely gets overused and underperformed. So Vidak Grubac, I hope I say the name right, says, "Hello, Ronnie. I'm a new PD. I inherited a station that is almost completely disconnected with the audience, which obviously is not good. How do I get my people back and drive engagement up?" So,
well, that's easy.
At P1.
Well,
I don't know if this is going to help.
Yeah, do these 3 things and you'll be good by noon. Well, you want to... music, I believe, is less important than it used to be, but you still have to get it right. That's the first building block. Make sure that the music is setting the tone of the party that you want, that the format is sound, and that the music is good. If you've got a station that's underperforming badly, you can probably run an extremely tight universe so that every time a listener punches in, they hear a monster hit. And then do some research if you can. If you don't have the budget for big research, use the Facebook page and pull 10 listeners in at a time and buy them pizza and talk to them. What went wrong? Why is the station not as good now as it was 6 months ago? And learn from those people. And then create audience offerings through your imaging and your contesting and your talent that reflect the market and the moment, and then tell the world that your station's better.
Great. Okay, another question. This one's from Cameron Ward. He wants to know why you think you moved around so much and changed jobs so often. What stopped you from staying at one station or group or in one place?
Spirit of adventure, I guess, is the answer. I'm 47 now, so I'm probably ready to not be moving around very much anymore. But for me, every day's a school day, and the opportunity to do US radio was something I wanted to do. It made me a better programmer because I got to see new audiences and different formats that I hadn't played with before. And radio on a bigger scale and a different scale. So, I left Australia originally because I wanted an adventure, loved Canada, and then did the US thing because I thought I could round out some learnings that would make me stronger.
So Ken, you want to pick up some more? So there is, I think, 2 more questions. So
yeah, let me grab one more. This one is from Dave Mason. When it comes to traffic, most reports these days are just a menu of roads and incidents delivered by a generic voice. How can a traffic personality be created? Same with weather and even news.
Mm-hmm. Hard, particularly when a good traffic report's 30 or 40 seconds long. How do you get personality through with that? I don't know. I think authenticity comes to the fore here a little bit, that it's the opportunity of the traffic reporter / personality to share some of themselves, whether it's isms, calling things different things. If you always call using the word fender bender every time you do a traffic report or something, you become famous for it. Or having little silly lines that are going to connect. Hard because you only have 40 seconds to do it, presumably. News, potentially even harder, because getting fun things away that are going to make you sticky to the audience is hard when you're talking about shootings or something horrible. So I think some of it is probably just longevity. The longer you do it, the more the audience gets to know the voice and trust you. But try to work some of you in there without forcing it, I guess is the answer.
Okay, so I think we'll close, Ken, with a wonderful comment from Marcus Fitzgerald, who's been very active. He says, "No way, 47, you don't look that age." So Ronnie, I think that's the perfect closing comment for that fantastic webinar. So thanks so much from my end. It was an absolute pleasure, man. I'm so thrilled to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I think we're going to put my email up. So if anyone's got questions later, let's keep the conversation going.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Ronnie. We appreciate you being here today. A video of today's webinar will be posted tomorrow on the P1 Media Group and Benstown websites and social channels. I'm sure Ronnie will have it up as well at ronniestanton.com, which I also suggest you check out. He also does a wonderful blog. So far, over 125 lessons written about radio. Short, interesting, timely, topical reads that will help you. So I do suggest you do that. So let's talk about next month. We're back in 4 weeks, the 21st of October, same time. Lessons from urban radio and why vulnerable personalities win. And we're going to talk with an urban radio legend. This guy has programmed some of the biggest urban music stations in the U.S. in markets like Boston, Chicago, San Francisco. A big winner, and he's worked with some of the superstar talent. His name is Elroy Smith, and of course, you get more details as we get a bit closer to the 21st of October. So Andy,
I think I speak for everyone, Ken, when I say that we would like his teaser video to also please to be from a hot tub.
We'll try to make that work. I'll pass that on. Not sure.
You do win the award. Best
That's
teaser
the
video.
audience talking. It's not me.
Also want to thank our producer, Suzanne, for joining us
Yep.
and putting this all together each time. Thank you very much. We do appreciate
Suzanne.
it, even though we rarely say it. We apologize for that. So on behalf of the P1 Media Group in Benstown, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you guys in 4 weeks.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Ronnie. Thanks so much for
Thank
coming
you.
on.